Today on The Hookup, we're gonna look at a game-changing new type of security camera that uses 2 lenses and 2 sensors stitched together to give you an ultra-wide horizontal field of view without the distortion typically associated with a fisheye lens. These cameras are so good that in my opinion, at least one of them should be included in every well-thought-out surveillance system from this point on. This video is sponsored by EcoFlow Portable Power Stations. Stick around at the end of the video to hear more about them. I like to think of myself as a pretty level-headed reviewer. I don't get overly excited too often, and I understand that every new product isn't revolutionary. So I hope what I'm about to say holds some weight. This camera from Annke, the NCD800, is my favorite security camera that I have ever used, period. And even though this one happens to be my favorite out of the bunch, all these dual lens cameras did pretty well and provide up to 180 degrees of horizontal detection at up to 200 feet and recognition and identification performance up to 25 feet, all with a single camera and a single Ethernet connection. So let's take a look at some of the general specs of these cameras, going from the least expensive to the most. First, we've got the Reolink Duo 1, which has an MSRP of $120. The Duo 1 was the first affordable consumer-grade dual lens camera and featured 2 4-megapixel sensors that overlap in the middle for a total of 150 degrees of horizontal field of view. Next is the Reolink Duo 2 with an MSRP of $150, which upgrades the sensors to 5 megapixels and achieves a full 180 degrees of horizontal field of view. After that, for an MSRP of $160, is the Annke FCD600, which has 2 4-megapixel lenses, again with the same 180 degrees horizontal field of view. Then for an MSRP of $320 is the Dahua OEM EmpireTech B180, which is available in both turret and bullet varieties and uses 2 4-megapixel sensors. Then at $370 is my personal favorite, the Annke NCD800, which is also available in turret and bullet forms and also uses 2 4-megapixel sensors. And then the last and most expensive camera in this test is the Uniview IPC-2K24, which has an MSRP of $740 and uses 2 2-megapixel sensors for a total field of view of 160 degrees horizontal. One of the biggest differences between these cameras is the size and aspect ratio of the video feed that they output. So for comparison's sake, here they all are side by side, and I've adjusted the scale so they all have an equal height. You can see that the Reolink Duo 1, Uniview 2K24, and Annke NCD800 all have ultra-wide 32:9 aspect ratios, which are the result of 2 16:9 widescreen images stitched together, except in the case of the Reolink Duo 1, where they actually arrive in 2 separate 2560x1440 video streams instead of a single pre-stitched video. The Annke NCD800's 4-megapixel sensors result in a 5120x1440 resolution image, which is 7.3 megapixels, while the Uniview's 2-megapixel sensors give a total resolution of 3840x1080, or just over 4 megapixels. The Reolink Duo 2 stitches 2 4x3 images together for an 8x3 aspect ratio, and a total resolution of 4608x1728, which is the highest of the group at 7.9 megapixels. The Dahua B180's resolution is 7.4 megapixels at 4096x1808, which isn't any standard aspect ratio, and the Annke FCD600 also has a non-standard aspect ratio with a resolution of 3632x1632, which is just under 6 megapixels total. I personally prefer the 32:9 images because they tend to look less distorted, and the other big advantage of a 32:9 aspect ratio is that when you're in a multi-camera view, it neatly takes up 2 camera positions instead of leaving a blank space in the row, which, as my 10-year-old would say, is very satisfying. The EmpireTech B180 does have an option to output 32:9, but only at a resolution of 3840x1080, which is unfortunately almost a 50% reduction in total resolution when using that format. As for their field of view, the Reolink Duo 1 advertises 150 degrees horizontal and the Uniview advertises 160 degrees, while the rest of the cameras claim to have 180. But when they're all mounted in the exact same position, it definitely doesn't appear that way. The Duo 1 and Uniview have almost identical fields of view, and the Reolink Duo 2 and the EmpireTech B180 appear to achieve that advertised 180 degrees horizontal field of view. But the Annke cameras are definitely selling themselves short, and you can see that they both have significantly wider field of views than the rest of the cameras, with the FCD600 on top, and it even shows the edge of my flower bed, which is about 8 feet behind the camera mounting location. The FCD600 also has by far the largest vertical field of view and not only shows the sidewalk directly under the camera, but also shows the most area above my neighbor's roofline. However, greater field of view is usually associated with less image clarity because each pixel needs to represent more physical area. And usually when you choose a security camera, you need to determine the purpose of that security camera. Is it going to be for general detection, in which case you'd want a wide-angle lens with a focal length around 2.8 millimeters, or is the camera going to be focused on identification with a more zoomed-in lens using a focal length between 3.6 and 6.0 millimeters? And that's where, in my opinion, these cameras are truly game-changing, because they use two narrow field of view lenses to give a wide horizontal field of view while still maintaining excellent clarity. So next we're going to look at video quality, and one important thing to note is that unlike a single lens camera where the clearest image is going to be in the middle, these cameras are going to have their best image around 1/3 and 2/3 of the horizontal field of view. Alright, let's start with a walking subject at 25 feet. Predictably, the worst image came from the Annke FCD600 since it pairs one of the lowest resolutions with the largest field of view, but I wasn't expecting it to be quite as bad as it actually was. And then in 5th place was the Uniview that just didn't have enough pixels available at 25 feet to make a clear image. 4th place was the Reolink Duo 2, which looked pretty blurry and had very little detail in my face or the sign. 3rd was the EmpireTech B180, which actually looked pretty good aside from the fact that it was distorted from being squished horizontally. In 2nd place was the Annke NCD800, which was over-sharpened but still had excellent clarity considering the scope of the image. And in 1st place, the Reolink Duo 1 produced the best and most accurate image with no artificial sharpening or artifacting. For a running subject at 25 feet, the results were mostly the same, but with each of the Reolink cameras falling one position. That put the Annke FCD600 in last, the Duo 2 in 5th, the Uniview in 4th, the EmpireTech in 3rd, the Duo 1 in 2nd, and the Annke NCD800 in 1st place. These results weren't particularly surprising, and the results correlated almost perfectly with their lens focal lengths. The only one that was a bit of a wild card was the Uniview, which uses a 4.0mm focal length, but ultimately those 2 megapixel sensors are just too low resolution to compete. At night, focal length and resolution are still important, but so is physical size of the sensor. So let's see how they performed at night, first in color night mode with a walking subject at 25 feet. The worst performer was definitely the Annke FCD600, which mutilated my face with distortion. Then in 5th place, the Reolink Duo 2 was just extremely blurry. The Duo 1 did significantly better than that, but still ended up in 4th place. Then in 3rd place, the Uniview's lower resolution helped it collect more light, but it was still overall very blurry. In 2nd place, the EmpireTech B180 didn't have any real issues, but it was just a little too blurry to make out the details in my face or the sign. In 1st place went to the Annke NCD800, which was over-sharpened but still had quite a bit of detail and no ghosting at all. Adding in movement with the running subject test at 25 feet, the Reolink Duos really struggled, and the Duo 2 finished in last place, and the Duo 1 was only slightly better than that in 5th place. The Annke FCD600 in 4th place managed an almost usable image but with a lot of over-sharpening, and again in 3rd place was the Uniview, which was nice and bright but barely had any detail. The EmpireTech did slightly worse in the running test than it did with walking, but it was still very decent and more than enough to take 2nd place, and the Annke NCD800 finished 1st again with an image filled with digital noise, but with no blurring and quite a bit of preserved detail. Again, these results are far from surprising since color night performance is largely based off of the ratio of sensor size and resolution. And again, we see an almost perfect performance correlation with their listed specifications, with the EmpireTech B180 and the Annke NCD800 coming out on top with their 1/1.8 inch 4 megapixel sensors. So that means that the Annke NCD800 had the best aspect ratio, the second best field of view, the best daytime image, and the best nighttime image. So the question is there any reason not to buy it? Or more specifically, is there a reason that you'd choose one of the other dual lens cameras instead? First, let's talk price. The Annke NCD800 is currently listed at $370, which is $50 more than the EmpireTech B180 and 4 times more expensive than the Reolink Duo 1, which performed pretty well. To me, there is no question that the NCD800 is the best in the group. And if you consider you're essentially getting 2 cameras, then $185 per camera isn't completely unreasonable, but it's still a lot of money. As for the Uniview, I am not sure why $740 was the price for two 2-megapixel sensors, but one thing is for sure, the cost versus performance ratio on the 2K24 camera doesn't make any sense. Second, let's talk form factor. The Annke NCD800 and EmpireTech B180 come in bullet and turret forms, and I significantly prefer the turret form for these cameras because they don't feel as imposing and conspicuous. But the NCD800 turret design is not nearly as good as the EmpireTech T180 because there's no way to adjust the roll of the camera, only the pan and tilt, so you won't be able to level the image if your camera is mounted to an unlevel surface. The third thing to consider is two-way talk, which on the EmpireTech B180 does work in Blue Iris, while the two-way talk of the Annke and Reolink only work in their manufacturer apps. Fourth, all these cameras have on-device person and vehicle detection, and I was able to get the on-bit triggers of the Annke, Uniview, and EmpireTech cameras to trigger recording in Blue Iris, but I couldn't get that functionality working with Reolink cameras. If you're planning on using these cameras with a third-party MVR, I'd suggest sticking to the Annke or EmpireTech, but if you're planning on using them in standalone mode with an SD card, the Reolink app delivers a significantly more polished experience for things like notifications, live view, changing settings, and viewing recorded footage. Fifth, the Annke, Uniview, and EmpireTech cameras are color night vision cameras and don't have any infrared filters or infrared light. And while the Reolink cameras do have a color night vision mode, if you prefer infrared night vision, you'll want to stick to the Reolink Duo 1 or Duo 2 instead. And last, the other reason that you might want to go with the Reolink is that the Duo 1 and Duo 2 come in a ton of other unique varieties like powered Wi-Fi, battery Wi-Fi, battery cellular, and even a power over Ethernet floodlight version that might add enough supplemental lighting to solve the poor nighttime performance. I've got links down in the description for all the cameras that I tested in this video, and as always, I'd appreciate it if you could use those links since as an Amazon affiliate, I do earn a small commission on them at no cost to you. Also, as I mentioned, this video is sponsored by EcoFlow Portable Power Stations. EcoFlow had me test out one of their largest power stations, the Delta Max 2000. The Delta Max is the bigger brother of the Delta Mini, and the most noticeable difference is the AC output, where the Delta Mini can supply 1400 watts continuous or up to 1800 watts with EcoFlow's X-Boost technology. In comparison, the Delta Max can nearly double that with 2400 watts continuous output or up to 3400 watts using X-Boost. It also more than doubles the storage capacity of the Delta Mini, going from 882 watt hours to 2016 watt hours. The Delta Max is also the perfect power station to bring to a tailgate, on a weekend camping trip, or to a job site to provide all the power that you'll need all day through its 6 AC outlets, 4 USB-A ports, and 2 USB-C ports capable of 100 watts of fast charging each, all without the noise pollution or air pollution caused by a traditional generator. To recharge your Delta Max, it accepts up to 800 watts of solar panels, providing a full charge in about 4 hours of full sun, or you can recharge it with the AC Quick Charge feature, which can take the Delta Max from 0% to 80% in just 65 minutes. The Delta Max is highly configurable through the EcoFlow app, and it lets you monitor individual power consumption, runtime, and charge state, as well as set auto-off timers for the entire unit or just the AC inverter to make sure you always have power left when you need it. Check out the Delta Max using the link down in the description to support this channel. I'd also like to take a second to thank all of my awesome patrons over at Patreon for your continued support of my channel, and if you're interested in supporting my channel, please check out the links down in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that thumbs up button and consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching The Hookup.